In the city of Seattle, Washington, where the skies often carried a blanket of gray clouds and the streets smelled of freshly brewed coffee drifting out from countless cafes, lived a young man named Ryan Carter, a 26-year-old software developer who had recently moved to the city for a promising career opportunity. Ryan was ambitious, disciplined, and grounded, but like many young professionals living in a bustling city far from home, he sometimes felt lonely. What kept his life full of light was his girlfriend, Emily Parker, a 24-year-old nursing student with bright eyes, a compassionate spirit, and a laugh that could turn even the gloomiest Seattle day into sunshine. Ryan and Emily had been dating for over a year, and while their relationship was still young, they shared something real, a bond that was slowly but surely deepening as they learned about each other's dreams, flaws, and fears. Life between them wasn't perfect. Ryan often worked long hours, and Emily spent nights buried in her textbooks. But somehow, they always found time to connect, whether through late-night walks by Lake Union, quick coffee dates between classes, or cozy evenings watching movies at Ryan's apartment. One weekend, Emily suggested that Ryan come down to Tacoma, where she was living with her aunt Karen Mitchell while she finished nursing school. Karen had taken Emily in when she needed stability, and she had been more like a second mother than an aunt, guiding her, supporting her, and cheering her on through every milestone. Emily wanted Ryan to spend the weekend with them not just so they could have more time together, but also because she wanted Ryan and Karen to know each other better. Ryan was excited but nervous. Meeting someone so important to Emily felt like a test of sorts, and though Emily reassured him that Karen was warm and kind, Ryan couldn't help but wonder how he would measure up in her eyes. The drive from Seattle to Tacoma took less than an hour, filled with the sound of music on the radio and Emily telling stories about her childhood and how her aunt had shaped so much of her life. By the time they pulled into Karen's driveway, Ryan's nerves were buzzing, but when the door opened and Karen appeared, some of that worry began to fade. Karen was a woman in her mid-40s with dark brown hair tied neatly back, glasses perched gracefully on her nose, and a calm but welcoming smile. She carried herself with an air of wisdom, the kind that comes from years of both struggles and victories. "So this is Ryan," she said warmly, hugging Emily before extending her hand to him. "I've heard plenty about you." Ryan shook her hand, offering a polite smile, and felt a little of his tension dissolve. The evening went smoothly. Karen cooked a hearty homemade meal, and the three of them sat around the dining table sharing stories. Ryan found himself laughing more than he expected, as Karen had a sharp wit and a way of making him feel comfortable. Emily seemed delighted to see the two of them getting along, and by the time they all said goodnight, Ryan felt reassured. Maybe this weekend wouldn't be as nerve-wracking as he had feared. The next morning, Ryan woke up earlier than Emily. Wanting to start the day fresh, he decided to take a shower before breakfast. He gathered his things, stepped into the small bathroom, and turned on the water. He didn't realize that the door lock was loose, something Karen had been meaning to fix. Halfway through his shower, as steam filled the room, the door creaked open. Ryan froze, heart racing, and quickly peeked around the curtain, only to see Aunt Karen standing in the doorway holding a laundry basket. Her eyes widened in shock, and she immediately turned red. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, backing up. Ryan stammered. "I thought the door was locked." She shook her head quickly, clearly embarrassed. "It's my fault, I should have knocked," she said as she shut the door and hurried away. Ryan stood there, mortified, unsure whether to laugh or groan. At breakfast, the incident hung in the air like an invisible weight. Emily chatted cheerfully about her plans for the day, but Ryan noticed that Karen seemed quieter, and he himself felt awkward. Finally, Karen cleared her throat, her tone sincere. "Ryan, I owe you an apology. I walked in on you earlier without knocking. I wasn't thinking. That was entirely my fault." Ryan shook his head quickly, eager to brush it off. "Really, don't worry about it. It was just a misunderstanding." Emily, sensing something odd in the air, glanced between them but didn't press further. The three of them carried on, and slowly the awkwardness gave way to normal conversation again. Later that day, Emily stepped out to meet a nursing school friend, leaving Ryan and Karen at the house. Ryan felt uneasy at first, unsure how to navigate being alone with her after the embarrassing moment that morning. But Karen, perhaps sensing his discomfort, was the one to break the silence. "Listen, Ryan," she said as they sat in the living room with mugs of coffee. "That little accident earlier was embarrassing, but I don't want you to feel uncomfortable here. Emily really cares about you, and that matters to me more than anything." Ryan felt a wave of relief at her honesty. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I was worried you might think less of me because of it." Karen chuckled softly, shaking her head. If anything, it showed me you're human. And from what I've seen, you're good to Emily. That's all that matters to me. The conversation that followed surprised Ryan. Karen opened up about how she had stepped in to raise Emily when her parents had moved away for work and how she had always promised to give her niece stability and support. She spoke about the challenges of balancing her career as a teacher while being a guardian and how proud she was to see Emily growing into a compassionate young woman. Ryan listened, deeply moved. He realized then that loving Emily also meant respecting and honoring the people who had shaped her. He began to see Karen not just as Emily's aunt but as a cornerstone in her life, someone whose approval and trust were worth earning. Over the rest of the weekend, Ryan and Karen grew more comfortable around each other. The initial embarrassment faded, replaced by mutual respect and understanding. When Sunday arrived and it was time for Ryan and Emily to head back to Seattle, Karen stood by the door with a smile. "Ryan," she said kindly, "you handled everything with maturity this weekend. I think Emily chose well." Ryan grinned, feeling a swell of pride. He shook her hand, and Emily hugged her tightly before they left. As they drove back toward Seattle, the skyline slowly appearing in the distance, Emily rested her head on Ryan's shoulder and asked, "So, what do you think of Aunt Karen?" Ryan smiled, his heart warm. "She's incredible. I can see why you admire her so much." Emily squeezed his hand, and Ryan realized that relationships weren't just about two people in love. They were about families, histories, and the connections that came with them. What had started as a simple weekend visit had become a life lesson. Sometimes the most awkward, uncomfortable moments could open the door to deeper understanding, respect, and love. For Ryan, what shocked him wasn't the accident in the bathroom but the way it led to something far greater. An unexpected bond with someone who meant the world to Emily. That weekend, he learned that maturity, patience, and respect for a loved one's family were just as important as the love between two.